After saving a drowning billionaire, this single mom disappeared. Now he's desperate to find her. The morning sun beamed down on the bustling beach, but the real drama was hidden beneath the waves. People splashed around, oblivious to a sudden frantic struggle. A shadowy figure thrashed in the water, waves crashing around him, as he sank deeper and deeper. It was Carter Sinclair, the billionaire who once seemed untouchable in his corporate tower, now flailing for survival. The crowd gasped, their eyes widening. Panic spread like wildfire. Who would save him? Then, amidst the chaos, there she was, Emily, a single mom with wild curls and fierce determination. She dove into the waves, every inch of her body roaring with urgency. The cold water knocked the breath from her lungs as she swam toward the sinking man. Time stretched. She felt the salty sting in her eyes. The weight of his desperation pushed against her. It was as if the ocean itself held its breath, waiting. Emily grabbed Carter just as he was about to disappear beneath the surface. With all her strength, she pulled him up, their eyes locking for just a moment, his wide with fear, hers steely with resolve. The panic of the crowd melted into cheers. They had witnessed a miracle. But once Carter was safe on the shore, everything changed. One minute he was a drowning man, the next he was just gone. Emily was left staring at the empty waves where he had been dead. As she turned to the crowd, her heart raced. Whispers floated around her. Where did that woman go? Wasn't she just here? It was as if she had vanished into thin air. People scanned the beach, but Emily was nowhere to be found. Just like that, a hero became a mystery. The sonorous sounds of children playing mixed with the unsettling silence of her disappearance. His gratitude turned to confusion, then desperation. Carter felt that tightness in his chest. He had to find her. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Carter's mind raced. Why would a woman who pulled him from death's grip just vanish? The truth, tinged with something darker, loomed over him like a thick fog. He stared into the horizon, each wave whispering Emily's name while a hollow ache filled his heart. A sense of urgency gripped him. He had to search for her. He had more than enough resources and connections, but the looming question held him captive. What had driven her into hiding? The air crackled with uncertainty, and the stillness settled around him, thick as smoke. With every minute that passed, the urge to uncover the secret behind her disappearance grew insatiable. Where was Emily, and what happened beneath those deceptively calm waves? Carter stood at the edge of the beach, the thrumming sound of the waves a horrible lullaby. People continued to laugh and enjoy their day, blissfully unaware that behind him, he had plunged into the depths of another kind of water, emotional turmoil. He couldn't shake the feeling that Emily had become more than just a rescuer. She was a mystery tangled into his very soul. Determined, Carter pulled out his phone. With each tap on the screen, he found himself growing more anxious. He could hire investigators, but who would really understand the depths of what had just transpired? As the clicks of his fingers faded into the background noise, a blaring horn jolted him back to reality. A lifeguard racing toward him slowed and offered a terse nod. Did you see which direction she went? Carter asked, urgency lacing his voice. The lifeguard shook his head. I didn't, man. I just saw you come back to shore. It was chaos. No one knows where she went. Carter swallowed hard. Was she afraid? Was she hiding from something more sinister? With a quick flick of his wrist, he tossed aside his phone. He couldn't wait for somebody else to figure this out. He knew he had to take matters into his own hands. The idea of letting Emily slip away haunted him like an endless loop of bad dreams. He scanned the area and took a deep breath. Where would a woman like Emily hide? She was resourceful, determined, but she had also been terrified of losing something or someone. He had felt that fear in her eyes as they locked for that brief moment. It was a connection, one charged with urgency and something more profound. Pushing through the gathering crowd, he didn't care who was staring or judging. Carter moved toward the nearby boardwalk, partially hidden by palm trees, where shops and cafes bustled with activity. He began asking if anyone had seen a woman matching Emily's description. Each rejection felt like ice-cold water running down his spine. "Did you see her?" he asked a group of tourists, heart racing with every moment that passed. "No man," one replied, shrugging, "but I heard her yelling. Something about I can't go back." Carter's chest tightened. What couldn't she face? What had driven her to the ocean's depths before? Where? He urged, but the tourist had lost interest. Turning back to his friends frustrated, Carter continued to scour the nearby shops. His eye caught a glimmer of something, a color, a movement that seemed out of place. He rushed toward it, pushing past a couple who were laughing noisily as they split a coconut drink. There, in the corner, a woman with familiar wild curls, dressed in a dark cover-up, looked out of place. Emily. It was her. But before he could shout her name, before he could break the spell of surprise, she turned sharply and slipped into the alley beside the shop, her gaze cutting through the crowd like a knife. "Wait!" he called, instinctively starting after her, desperation powering his legs. The chase through the narrow alley felt like a scene from a movie, one that he desperately wished had a predictable ending. But the deeper he ventured into the shadows, the more apparent it became that Emily was battling her own demons as he pursued her. Flashes of doubt raced through his mind. What if she didn't want to be found? What if she was running from him too? His heartbeat roared in his ears, a frantic rhythm that drowned out the world around him. Just as he reached the entrance of the alley, he heard a muffled cry and a loud thud. "Emily!" Carter's voice echoed through the emptiness. The air became heavier, thick with tension, as he wondered what lay ahead. What had he just walked into? Was this a chase, or had he stumbled into something far more dangerous than he could ever have imagined? There was only one way to find out, but would he be ready for the truth? Carter peered into the dim alley, dread creeping up his spine. Shadows clung to the walls like ghosts, and he strained his ears, listening for another sound, anything that could guide him to Emily. "Emily!" Panic laced his voice, desperation pushing him forward. The thud still reverberated in his mind. Was she hurt? He dashed further into the darkness, the dying light from the street behind him casting long, eerie shadows. A metallic scent hung in the air, and he immediately felt a knot tighten in his gut. Suddenly he caught a glimpse of movement at the far end of the alley. His heart raced anew. "Emily!" he shouted. Was that her? He stumbled forward, adrenaline coursing through him. But the closer he got, the clearer it became it was not Emily. It was a scruffy figure, crouched low, hands trembling, whispering softly to itself like a broken record. Carter felt a chill grip him. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, his voice steady yet cautious. The figure looked up. The face was obscured by matted hair, but the wide eyes were haunting, reflecting a lifetime of turmoil. "You shouldn't be here," it rasped, looking back toward the shadows. "Have you seen her? A woman, dark hair, wild curls?" The figure shook its head sharply, panic flaring in its expression. "No, you have to leave. They're coming back, they'll find you." He felt his stomach drop. Who's coming? In a flash, the figure bolted, disappearing into the deeper recesses of the alley as if the shadows had claimed it. Carter took a breath, heart pounding hard enough to burst. He couldn't waste time with more distractions. He turned and pressed forward, scanning the ground for any sign of Emily. And then he saw a small dark backpack lying abandoned against the wall. His mind raced. What if it was hers? He rushed toward it, his fingers trembling as he reached down to examine the contents. Among rumpled clothes, a little notebook spilled out. Picking it up, he opened it to find a jumbled mess of thoughts. Names, dates, and frantic words filled the pages. One stood out. The past can't be buried forever. Carter felt sick. What had she done? What did she know? Was her life in danger? An echoing sound pierced the stillness, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate sounds coming from the entrance of the alley. He darted behind a dumpster, heart thumping wildly as shadows fell across the entrance. 3 figures appeared, faces obscured, their tones gruff but low. They scanned the alley with predatory precision. "She was here," one said, his voice a growl. "We can't let her slip away." Carter's breath caught in his throat. It was no longer just about finding Emily, He was now wrapped in something much deeper and darker than he could have imagined. His mind raced with the implications. Did they mean to capture her? Were they the reason she fled? How could he help her now? As the figures moved closer, he took a glance down the alley, contemplating his next move. He couldn't just stand by. That wasn't in his nature. But every second spent here meant Emily was closer to falling into their hands. Suddenly, one of the figures turned sharply, eyes locking onto his hiding spot. Move! Carter barely had time to react. He bolted deeper into the alley, heart racing with terror. He felt like prey. Every instinct screamed that he needed to hurry. But as he turned a corner, he ran directly into another figure, someone tall and imposing, their face twisted into a cruel smile. Thought you could just run away? It was a challenge, a promise of the storm yet to come. Carter's pulse quickened as time slowed, each heartbeat echoing like a countdown. What had he stumbled into? What fate awaited Emily if he didn't act quickly? The choice loomed ahead. Fight or flight, but what if he was wrong about everything? Before he could fully process it, the figure lunged and Carter's instincts kicked in. And then the darkness closed in. Carter's world exploded into chaos. He dodged left, adrenaline propelling him into a sprint, the looming figure's hand just brushing against his jacket. The alley narrowed, shadows twisting around him like a living thing. Heart pounding, he sprinted onward, breath coming in sharp gasps. Get back here! The voice shouted, low and threatening. Instinct screamed at him. He had to keep moving. He could hear the heavy footsteps of his pursuer gaining on him. With each heartbeat, the promise of pain grew closer. Yet his thoughts were only on Emily. He had to find her before it was too late. Carter took a hard right, barely managing to maintain his balance as he turned sharply. He stumbled into a dead-end brick walls rising like giants at either side. Panic surged as he whirled around to face his predator. The imposing figure advanced, a menacing grin stretching across a face that held too many secrets. Nowhere to run, the figure taunted, stepping forward, the glint of something metallic catching the flickering light from a distant street lamp. Fear clawed at Carter's chest, but the thought of Emily was a lifeline pulling him back from the edge of despair. What do you want from her? He shouted, defiance ringing clear in his voice. The figure chuckled, a low guttural sound that echoed off the damp walls. She has seen things, heard things. They're looking for her. And you don't want to be involved. Walk away while you can. Carter clenched his fists, certainty grounding his resolve. I'm not leaving without her. Suddenly, a new sound broke through the tension, the patter of footsteps approaching from the opening of the alley. A flicker of hope surged through him. Maybe it was Emily. But the figure before him looked over his shoulder, eyes narrowing as he stiffened in response. We've got company, he hissed, transforming from a threatening figure into a warning of something worse. Carter glanced behind him, heart clenching with dread. Emerging from the shadows were two more figures, menacing silhouettes that flanked the alley's entrance. The air thickened with danger, a palpable tension coiling tightly around him. Run! Someone shouted, but it wasn't Emily's voice. It was the scruffy figure from earlier, now sprinting toward him from the opposite end of the alley, eyes wild with fear. Before he could comprehend what was happening, the original figure lunged at Carter with violent speed. He dodged, body moving instinctively, and barely slipped past the outstretched hand. The new arrival collided with the first man. The sound of a struggle erupted as fists met flesh, a blurring of chaos that swallowed the narrow space. Carter's brain raced. Amidst the din, two of the figures by the entrance held their ground, watching the brawl unfold. They were not here to intervene, he realized they were here to make sure no one escaped. But he couldn't hesitate. Emily's safety hovered like a candle flame in a storm, the precious light he needed to protect. With a fierce determination, Carter pushed past the fighting figures, adrenaline propelling him toward the entrance. But just as he reached the threshold, a hand clamped onto his shoulder, spun him around. Where do you think you're going? The voice was cold, drenched in malice. A flicker of recognition flashed in Carter's mind. The hair stood on the back of his neck. He had seen this person. The face was changing, but the menace remained constant. The brutal grip tightened, hope fleeting unceremoniously. Establishing eye contact, Carter felt the weight of the world press upon him. Emily, what had they done to her? As his heart pounded relentlessly, the scruffy figure broke free from the confrontation behind him, rushing to his side. "We need to go." Carter felt an undeniable spark of hope but feared it might flicker out just as quickly. "But what about Emily?" he shouted, voice strained. "We can only save ourselves right now." The shadows loomed over them, the figures encroaching. The choice once again split: stay to search and face the danger, or flee into the night, hoping against hope to find Emily later. As the shadows crept closer, the weight of their decision pressed against them. Carter's instincts screamed louder than ever. But what would the price of his choice truly be? And in that charged moment, with their futures hanging by a thread, the decisive spark ignited something deeper within him. "I'm not leaving her," he declared, resolve hardening. Before he could articulate another word, the world erupted around him as a loud crash echoed, and the alley was thrown into chaos once more. The instant the crash echoed through the alley, Sandy staggered back, momentarily disoriented. An old dumpster had toppled over, metal clattering against the pavement, shrouding the chaos in an even thicker layer of confusion. The thuds of fists colliding froze for a heartbeat, replaced by the gruff breathing of the men surrounding them. Carter seized the moment. "Now!" he shouted, tearing his shoulder free from the grip that held him. Though adrenaline surged through him, his feet felt like lead. Every instinct urged him to turn back, to charge forward to help Emily. But the figure looming behind them, cold and unyielding, made progress feel impossible. "Go!" the scruffy ally yelled again, pulling Carter by the arm, urgency clawing at each word. "We need to move or they'll trap us for good." Carter didn't argue. He forced his legs into action, dodging past the fallen dumpster just as the alley erupted in frantic motion. To his left, the original attacker was grappling with the scruffy figure, fists flying in a storm of primal desperation. Panic and fury echoed like a drum in Carter's chest as he felt torn between loyalty to a stranger and the urgent drive to find Emily. The second crash resounded. The two figures at the alley entrance remained unfazed, their nasty smiles spreading wider. "You're in our playground now," one of them sneered, glancing at the struggle that wrought disarray behind them. Carter's mind raced. There has to be another way out. He scanned the walls for a possible escape route. He spotted a small door, almost hidden in the shadows to his right. It was a long shot, but without hesitation he shouted, "That door! We might be able to get through." "The hell with that. We can't split up," the scruffy companion hissed, glancing uneasily over their shoulders. But Carter already started toward the door, ignoring the growing dread pooling in his stomach. "I'll take my chances." He pushed against the weight of fear that made his legs feel heavy. He threw his body against the door, but it wouldn't budge. With desperate hands, he searched for a handle, anything that could release him from the dark trap this alley had become. The sounds of battle intensified behind him. The scruffy figure was throwing punches, but the attackers were relentless, and for every blow landed, there seemed to be three more in response. A sickening twist in Carter's gut made him feel sick. Time was running out. He focused once more, positioned himself to hit the door with his shoulder, gritting his teeth against the pain it was sure to deliver. He charged again, this time with every ounce of strength he could muster. The door quaked with force, rattling in its frame, and threw itself back an inch. "Just enough. Come on," he urged the scruffy figure. Another yell split the air, a voice laced with pain. He turned back, seeing one of the attackers pull a knife, glinting with a shimmer of menace against the dim lights. "Carter, we need to," not thinking, he bolted toward the fight, an impulse to save his ally rising above the haze of fear. The door could wait. He had stepped into this chaotic nightmare, and he couldn't abandon anyone again. "What the hell are you doing?" the scruffy guy shouted, still trying to fend off the mounting threat. As Carter's heart raced, light flared at the end of the alley. He could almost see the freedom beyond, but first he had to intervene. Just then a glimmer of movement caught his eye. Emily! She would be there. Before he could complete the thought, the scene erupted anew. A blow landed heavily, and as one of the attackers stumbled back, he found himself staring down the barrel of the knife. Dread washed over him. This could take a lethal turn. With one swift breath, planning a move that felt reckless but necessary, he charged straight ahead. In an instant everything narrowed to this one desperate act. Would it be enough to save them all? Or would he fall short, just as he did in the moments that led them to now? Time suspended as the knife glinted in the flickering light, the moment teetering on the edge of fate. Carter surged forward, propelled by a rush of fear and fury. He saw the knife, its blade reflecting the pale light, and instinct kicked in. He lunged, arms outstretched, desperate to close the distance before the attacker could unleash that lethal arc. The attacker turned, surprise flickering across his face just as Carter crashed into him. They toppled to the pavement amid a flurry of limbs and muffled yells. Pain shot through Carter's shoulder as he hit the ground, but he didn't focus on it. His world had narrowed down to the fight, the chaos of sounds blurring into a singular aim. Protect Emily and defeat this threat. A fist connected with his cheek, the impact causing stars to burst behind his eyelids. He licked his lips, tasting blood, yet he pushed it down. The fire within him ignited. The attacker wrapped a fist around his throat, squeezing hard, eyes wide with rage. Carter clawed at the arm, gasping for breath, desperation flooding every nerve. Just when the world started closing in, the scruffy figure appeared out of nowhere, delivering a vicious kick to the attacker's side. The grip loosened and Carter gasped for precious air, lungs burning, heart racing. "Get up!" the scruffy ally shouted, urgency painting each syllable. Gripping the ground, Carter rolled to the side, hoisting himself up just as the attacker regained focus, already lunging for him again. Panic was a roaring lion in his chest as he scrambled back, sliding on gravel and blood-slicked pavement. In the melee, he glimpsed Emily at the mouth of the alley, her eyes wide, reflecting the raw terror of the moment. He needed to get to her before this nightmare expanded, before it swallowed them all whole. Two attackers pinned the scruffy figure against the dumpster, hands swinging like mad, fists connecting with sickening thuds. The fight felt endless. Screams painted the air, each one sharpening his resolve. "Emily!" Carter shouted, anxiety racking his voice as he darted toward her. But even as he moved, he felt a hand grip his shoulder, pulling him back. It was one of the remaining attackers. Carter spun, adrenaline sending a jolt through his veins, and delivered a punch that landed squarely against the man's jaw. He stumbled back but didn't go down. This wasn't enough. They were more, and Carter was just one. The air thickened with tension. The alley had transformed into a claustrophobic arena, swirling with chaos. He couldn't think of anything beyond this moment. "Carter, the door!" the scruffy ally shouted, dodging a wild swing. "We can make it!" Carter's gaze darted to the door, now ominously more visible as the fight swirled around him. If they could just get to it, hold them! He yelled, preparing himself for what must come next. But as the scruffy figure battled bravely against two men, another one slipped behind him. "No!" Carter boomed, lunging again. But he was too late. A sharp scream pierced through, a sound that sliced straight to his heart. The world funneled down to that singular point, the final moment of choice. "Emily! Get the hell out of here!" He managed to yell as he charged toward the chaos. He had to protect her. He had to do it now with every ounce of his being. Carter launched himself into battle, fierce and unrelenting, with one fear-bound thought. If he failed, if they caught her, what would happen next? But the stakes were veering high, and darkness loomed closer. Light flickered behind him as Emily's shadow edged farther away. The pounding in his chest didn't match the pounding in his feet. Each step was a pulse echoing despair. Would they break free? Or would he find himself, once again, powerless in front of a darkness he could not overcome? The path lay ahead, drawn nearer, twisting in uncertainty, ready to reveal its next cruel twist. Carter barely registered the sensation of pain as he barreled toward the fray. Everything around him erupted into chaos. Cries echoed in the confined space. Fists flew like thunderbolts, and a metallic tang of fear hung heavily in the air. The tight grip of the attacker's fingers around his throat reverberated in his thoughts. Rage ignited his muscles, and he seized the nearest object, a broken piece of wood, smashing it across the attacker's back. A satisfying crack echoed, causing the man to grunt and stumble sideways. But there was no time to celebrate. Two figures loomed menacingly, monsters emerging from the shadows, ready to smother any flickering hope. Carter felt his heart nagging at him, pulling his thoughts toward Emily. Where was she now? "Get the door, Carter!" the scruffy ally shouted again, voice strained but insistent. The knot of fear in Carter's gut twisted tighter. He darted toward the door, each step a calculated risk. Time felt slippery, shifting and bending as the chaos continued its relentless ballet around him. He could feel eyes, too many eyes, watching every move, hungry for the moment he would falter. Suddenly, he heard a muffled sound, a whimper, the very sound he feared the most. He focused, scanning the darkness, and there on the ground, struggling to get back up, was Emily. "Carter," she rasped, panic flooding her voice, echoing in his mind like thunder. The world around him blurred again, morphing into snippets of motion. He surged forward, pushing aside one attacker with a brutal shove, the momentum throwing the man against the dumpster. "Emily, keep moving," he yelled frantically, fueled by dread and adrenaline. A shrill screech cut through the air as one of the attackers lunged at him, knife glinting ominously. Carter ducked just in time, the rush of wind brushing past his ear. In one swift motion, he grasped the attacker's wrist, twisting and shoving, sending the knife clattering to the ground. Gritting his teeth, he followed with a punch to the gut, watching the man crumple. But there was no time. The other men were regrouping, and the air crackled with pending danger. Emily scrambled to her feet, frazzled hair framing her tear-streaked face, and Carter felt the urge to race to her. But then he saw the scruffy figure, his ally, trapped against the wall, 3 men bearing down on him like predators closing in for the kill. "Don't!" Carter shouted. Rage and desperation laced his voice. He couldn't let them take his chance away. Not again. With a golden moment of clarity amidst the chaos, he knew what he had to do. Shoving his body into another fray, he spun around and hurled himself toward his ally, knocking him out of the way as fists connected with Carter's back, propelling him toward the ground. A gasp burst from his lips as he hit the pavement hard, but he couldn't falter, not now. Then he felt it, an unmistakable surge of warmth and pressure. The ground beneath him, slick with something vile and wrong. Blood? Panic shot through him, yet he rolled instinctively, eyes darting toward Emily. But as he glanced back, horror twisted in his gut. She had paused, uncertainty flickering across her face. "Emily, move!" He screamed again, a wave of fear washing over him, but before she could react, one of the attackers had darted past Carter, cracking like lightning, seizing her wrist in a grip of iron. Carter's heart plummeted. As he surged forward, a shocking realization crashed over him. They weren't just fighting for their lives. They were fighting for their very souls. "Let her go," he bellowed, ready to fight the world itself. The smell of sweat and blood surged in his nostrils as he prepared for one final push. Could he break through and reach her in time? Or would this darkness drown them both, pulling them into an abyss they might never escape? Rage coursed through Carter like wildfire as he lunged toward Emily, each heartbeat a desperate drum echoing the urgency of their plight. The attacker's grip tightened around her wrist, his eyes gleaming with malice. Carter's breath caught in his throat, each second stretching impossibly, as if the world had frozen in that moment, a horrifying tableau. "Don't you dare touch her!" he roared, desperation fueling his every move. The darkness around him palpably thickened, an oppressive weight bearing down on his shoulders. He crashed into the fray, fists flying, the metal tang of blood filling his lungs. He barely registered the hits he took, pain eclipsed by the burning need to reach Emily. Adrenaline surged through his veins, driving him to act. He spotted the knife on the ground, the cold blade glimmering tauntingly in the dim light. In a swift motion, he snatched it up, feeling its weight settle in his palm. The moment hung, fraught with indecision. Would he need to use aggression to save her? What price would they pay to escape this nightmare? "Carter!" Emily screamed, her voice slicing through the chaos like a siren. Panic consumed him further. He could see terror in her eyes, shimmering in the chaotic half-light. Lurching forward, he thrust himself into the attacker's path. The man sneered, inches from Emily, as he flung her aside like a discarded toy. Carter lunged, adrenaline blurring his vision, and struck out wildly. The air crackled with tension as fists connected. The attacker recoiled but came back swinging, and Carter felt the force smash into him, sending him staggering back. But this time he wouldn't back down. Gritting his teeth, he swung the knife, the edge glinting dangerously as it sliced through the air. "Get away from her!" he shouted, his heart hammering in his chest, and that split second time seemed to pause. Carter's finger hovered over the blade, ready to strike, and he saw the struggle in Emily's eyes, a mixture of fear and hope. With one fluid motion, he redirected his body, aimed not at the attacker but at the darkness threatening to overshadow them both. The attacker diverted his gaze, and in that singular instant of distraction, Carter seized his chance. He drove his shoulder against the man's chest, knocking him off balance, and followed with a hard jab to his gut. The escape path cleared, if only momentarily. "Emily, run!" He managed to choke out, his voice strained. She hesitated, eyes wide as she took in the scene. The scent of sweat and blood intensified, mixing with fear that hung in the air like a fog. But pain coursed through Carter again, this time sharper. A vicious steel blade tore into his side. He gasped, the shock of it sending ripples of agony through his body. He staggered back, clutching the wound, eyes shutting briefly against the flickering lights of their desperation. "Carter!" Emily's panic jolted him. She dashed toward him as he crumpled to the ground, but that instinct to protect flared within him again. "Go!" he urged fiercely, forcing the words past lips painted with blood. "You have to, not without you." She dropped to her knees, reaching for him, but the world started to spin away. "Leave me." A rush of desperation spilled from his heart. He wouldn't let her follow him into hell. Yet as the darkness threatened to swallow him whole, he caught sight of something that stopped time. A flame atop the roof. Did they have a chance? Would hope rise from their despair? The attacker loomed closer, a shadow of malice, and a chilling grin spread across his face. "Let us finish this." In that moment, amidst the searing pain, Carter drew in a breath, readying himself for what came next. Would strength find him again? Or would this bleak fate consume them both? The choice loomed, crackling like electricity in the air, leaving them at the edge of an abyss, intertwined in a terrifying dance between survival and surrender. Carter's heart raced, each thud a thunderous echo in the silence that wrapped around them like a shroud. The attacker took a step closer, his expression cruel and unyielding. The glint in his eyes promised pain and suffering, and Carter couldn't let that happen. Not to Emily. He forced himself to focus through the haze of pain, tightening his grip on the knife, feeling its cold steel cutting against the skin of his palm. Emily's voice trembled. It shot through him like an arrow. Her fear was palpable, mingling with desperation, the kind that can shatter the most fortified resolve. But he had to stay strong. At least for her. With a sudden burst of will, he lunged forward, the knife aimed straight at the attacker's abdomen. The man sidestepped, laughing as he did, a sinister sound that echoed in the night as if mocking Carter's fierce attempt. But Carter wasn't done yet. He twisted, swinging with all his might, feeling the weight of desperation bolster his resolve. "Stop!" Emily screamed, her eyes darting between Carter and the looming figure. She was scared, terrified even, but the defiance in her voice held a spark, spurred him on. In that moment he caught the flicker of something behind the attacker, a shadow, moving in the periphery. Desperation clawed at Carter's insides, urging him to act. With no time to waste, he feigned left and struck right, aiming for the attacker's throat. The blade met flesh. A howl of pain erupted as the man staggered back, clutching his neck where the knife had barely grazed him. This was the opening Carter needed. He surged forward, pushing through the fog of his agony, determined to shield Emily, even if it cost him everything. But the attacker wasn't finished. Wounded and furious, he lunged forward, a wild look on his face, eyes flashing with rage. In that instant everything went still, the world around them fading into the background. The flames flickering from the rooftop danced in absurd contrast to the chaos, illuminating the terror encapsulating Carter and Emily. "Get away!" Emily cried, throwing herself toward Carter, her movements frantic. Without thinking, he reached out to grab her, pulling her close. He couldn't let her near danger. As the attacker rushed them, Carter moved swiftly, spinning around to put himself between her and the oncoming threat. "Run!" he shouted, a fierce urgency layered in every word. But even as he spoke, he couldn't bear the thought of her fleeing while he faced this monster alone. With rage fueling their fight, they landed hits on each other like thunderclaps. But the attacker was relentless, each strike more vicious than the last. Pain radiated through Carter's body as he stumbled back, blood seeping through his shirt in a warm, sticky rush. He felt weak and disoriented, but he couldn't falter. He couldn't leave Emily to face this alone. And then, in a brief moment of clarity amidst the chaos, Carter spotted the fire escape just beyond their struggle. It gleamed, a beacon of hope as thoughts rushed through his mind. If they could just reach it, Emily, the fire escape. He gasped, pointing. She nodded, understanding igniting in her eyes, but fear was etched in every line of her face. The attacker was regaining his footing, the wild anger simmering back into focus. Carter gathered what strength remained, and with a final burst of energy, he drove forward, shrugging off pain, letting instinct take over. He pushed Emily toward the escape, giving her a shove to propel her forward. But his moment of bravery was masked by an eruption of pain as the attacker seized his shoulder, dragging him back. "You think you can escape me?" he snarled, teeth gleaming in the shadows. In that instant, Carter felt his resolve waver. The darkness beckoning him seemed to whisper promises of despair. Yet, Emily's presence, a light in this engulfing ruins, reminded him who he was fighting for. The battle hung suspended in time. Would they escape? Was this the end? Carter gritted his teeth, heart racing one more time as he looked into Emily's eyes. "Go," he roared, a final plea for their lives as the nightmare zeroed in on him. The air crackled with tension, and then the world slammed into motion again, teetering on the edge of life and death. Would Carter be able to defeat his foe? Or were they destined to be caught in this never-ending nightmare? Carter's world spun like a tornado, chaos whispering horrible promises of fate, while he struggled against the attacker's iron grip. The weight of despair hung thick in the air. But even in that split second, something snapped inside him. His love for Emily burned like a flame, fierce and unyielding. Fueled by that raw emotion, Carter summoned every ounce of strength, tearing himself free from the assailant's grasp. "Emily," he gasped, shoving her toward the fire escape. "Go. Now." She hesitated, her eyes wide with fear and defiance. "I can't leave you." But time was fleeting, and Carter could feel danger converging on them. The attacker had staggered, but that brief moment of vulnerability was fading fast. "Please," he strained, every word laced with desperation. "I won't let them take you." With terror etched on her face, Emily finally turned, sprinting toward the fire escape. Carter followed, adrenaline pounding like drums in his ears. He could hear the man growling behind him, fury mingling with the metallic scent of blood that still hung in the air. "That's right, run." The attacker jeered, seeking vengeance, determination intensifying in his eyes. "You can't escape what's coming." As they reached the bottom of the fire escape, Emily began to climb, fingers gripping the cold metal rungs. Carter's heart thundered in his chest as he looked back, knowing his window was closing. He lunged toward the escape, eyes darting for cover, scrambling behind a dilapidated dumpster that smelled rancid but offered a moment's respite. The thud of footsteps grew louder as the attacker barreled down the alley. "You think you're safe?" he hissed, voice like poison as he scanned the scene. Just a few feet away, Carter's heart raced. In an act of sheer instinct, Carter seized a rock from the ground, hurling it toward the man. It struck him, the force of it causing anger rippling across his features. The man turned, enraged, eyes narrowing on Carter. "You'll regret that." That brief distraction was all Carter needed. He charged toward the fire escape, reaching the bottom rung just as Emily looked down at him, hope twinkling in her eyes. "Carter, come on." He sprinted up the metal ladder, each step igniting determination within him, pushing aside the sting of pain and exhaustion. They reached the roof, and the city below opened into a sprawling masterpiece bathed in twilight hues. But it was far from peaceful. "Where do we go?" Emily gasped, her breaths quickened and anxious. "We'll find a way across," he urged, scanning for an escape route. But as his eyes flitted around, the ominous sound of footsteps clambering toward the stairs made his heart drop. The world spun dangerously, every heartbeat a countdown. They were cornered, and he could feel the weight of the uncertainty clutching at his chest. "We have to jump," he said, looking into her eyes, desperately pleading with her to trust him. "Jump?" Emily echoed, terror painting her features, but the fire in his heart was bright. "Carter, trust me. It's our only way," he asserted, planting his feet firmly. "We can make it. On 3. She nodded, resolve slowly budding in her eyes as they readied themselves against the swirling chaos below. 1, 2, 3. Without waiting, he took a running leap, feeling gravity take hold, wind rushing past him like a wild river. As he hit the edge of the building across from them, the impact jolted through his body, but adrenaline masked the pain. Carter. Emily followed suit, leaping with determination. She landed a bit more precariously, but he was there to wrap an arm around her waist, keeping her steady. Their eyes met, breathless, hearts racing. "We did it," she whispered, realization cracking through her fear. But there was little time for celebration. The attacker was gaining ground, scrambling up the fire escape more determined than ever, revealing his monstrous intent. "You can't escape from me," he bellowed. "Get inside," Carter shouted, pulling Emily toward the rooftop door that led into the building, hands shaking with urgency. They burst through the door, racing down the dimly lit hallway. The footsteps behind them grew louder, and the very air changed, swirling with anxiety. Carter's senses heightened. He had to protect her. That was now his singular focus. Just as they rounded the corner, the figure appeared, tall and menacing, eyes glaring with fury. "You think you can run forever?" he spat, barreling toward them like a storm. "Carter!" Emily yelled, panic spiking. Everything felt surreal as he positioned himself in front of her, heart pounding against his ribs like a jackhammer. "Stay back!" he yelled, determination lacing every word. With no clear weapon but his own courage, he charged forward. And then from nowhere, a rush of energy surged through him. He wouldn't let fear wrap around them again. Carter propelled himself into the fray, a last-ditch effort of defiance. The blow landed with a sickening thud, but he absorbed the pain, letting it fuel his next strike, pushing back against the darkness. Carter could see Emily out of the corner of his eye, standing resolute, ready to fight alongside him. "Don't give in to fear," she shouted, voice ringing clear. The word struck him like a lifeline. Carter ducked and dodged as the men struggled, an unexpected move granting him the momentum he needed. They clashed fiercely, bodies thumping against one another like waves crashing against rocks. And then exhilaration coursed through him. Carter saw an opening, a glimmer of light amidst the chaos, a chance to end this once and for all. With a fierce determination, he landed a last strike, filled with everything he had. The attacker staggered back, stunned, and in that moment, the air around them felt electric. "Run!" Carter shouted, feeling the weight of victory intertwined with relief. They sped through the hallway, heartbeats tangled. Pounding footsteps echoed behind, but the doorway to the bright outside beckoned promisingly. They burst through to the night sky, the stars glimmering above them, as if casting a spell beyond fear and chaos. Moments later, they slid into the safety of the street, panting. Emily turned, eyes brimming with relief, as adrenaline and realization hit them both. They had made it, together. Carter grasped her hands, a rush of warmth filling the gaps of fear that had threatened to consume them. "I thought I lost you," he managed, the vulnerability of his voice laid bare. "I wasn't going anywhere without you," she whispered, eyes bright with unspoken promises. But the danger still simmered beneath, darkened clouds lingering. They had escaped, yet the reality that their battle for freedom wasn't over weighed heavily. Carter's heart ached with love for the woman standing beside him. His resolve hardened once more. "We'll figure this out. We'll get to the bottom of this together." As they stood side by side, knowing this moment was just the beginning, tightness in his chest eased. They had faced darkness together and emerged stronger, but their fight wasn't just for survival. It was for a future they both craved. The world lay ahead, wide open with possibilities, but they would face any storm together. And as they ran into the embrace of the night, hand in hand, the glimmers of hope danced across the horizon, illuminating the darkness they had narrowly escaped. This was their turning point, their moment to rediscover freedom. And they were just beginning. So listen up. If you've enjoyed this wild ride, you need to subscribe to the channel immediately, so you don't miss any of our exclusive stories in the future. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let this story shine. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what just happened. We want to hear from you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling conclusion. True fans like you understand how important it is to support the channel through your actions. What are you waiting for? Get involved now.